Hi, Brandon Monroe here, and you're listening to the Bernie Breakdown. We'll see come Sunday. It's not going to shock me one bit if somebody can pull out a win or just have a good run, unless it's like Christopher Bell. At this point, I'd be very surprised if a Toyota ended up in victory lane. Well, I guess you could call me surprised. I'm Brandon Monroe, and alongside me, as always, is Mark Chavez, and I don't know what to say about that race that we just got done watching. A lot of stuff happening at the end of the Cup race, and we will get to that pretty soon. But let's start with the race on Saturday, which I would say played out pretty much exactly how we expected.
Yeah, pretty standard race. AJ won from the pole, although he did have to. Looked like he wasn't going to win that race. Got a late restart and took the lead back from Ty Gibbs, who led the good latter half of the race. But AJ gets the lead back, holds off. I think there was one more restart after that. Also won stage 1, so 6 bonus points he's leaving the Roval with, setting himself up for a nice run into the Final Four, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, those bonus points are definitely going to go a long way for AJ. I felt like he definitely needed some in this round if you wanted a real shot, and you win back-to-back races, you're going to accomplish just that. It's a huge round for Allmendinger in that team.
Fourth win at the Roval in a row, which we're the only 4 he entered, and then as you mentioned, 2 in a row to end the round. Great round for him. Put himself. He was kind of like in that in between with where Allgaier was. I think Allgaier was 3rd, and then where Josh Berry was. Now I think AJ might actually be starting this round 2nd in playoff points. So huge increase for him. Going through a bit of a rundown for the playoffs. We entered this race obviously with Noah Gragson and AJ Allmendinger locked in. Ty Gibbs locked in pretty early in the race in stage 2 or stage 1. Don't remember if we got any stage points in the first stage, but didn't need them. Had a pretty clear round. As I mentioned, led 24 laps, just one behind AJ Allmendinger's 25 and finished 2nd. Austin Hill locked in after stage 2 and is probably very happy that he had the cushion that he did. Had some power steering issues. I don't remember when they started happening, but they were on pit road basically every time they could be trying to repair it. Never really got it going, but finished 29th, but had enough points to still move on into the next round. Justin Allgaier finished 5th. Pretty solid day. Still probably right behind Noah and Ty as the top 2. AJ still could be in there, but I still want to see a little bit more on normal ovals. But at the end of the day, has a pretty clear round. There was some concern, obviously, after Texas, but still moves on by 35 points. Josh Berry finished 8th. He'll be moving into his first Final 8, as will Sam Mayer, who finished 11th. And then it gets really interesting. We had a good old-fashioned battle at the end of the race. Ultimately, it is Brandon Jones, who did win stage 2 and finished 7th and wound up moving on by just 2 points. Ryan Sieg finished 9th and was eliminated by 2 points. If he would have had to have passed Brandon Jones to get in. He had a little bit fresher tires, but not quite enough laps to get there. But I think we could both agree, great round for Ryan Sieg. I'm sure it's disappointing to finish in the top 10 in all 3 races in the round and still not move on, but he has set a new career high for top 10s with 13.
Yeah, really good season for Ryan Sieg. I definitely was rooting for him too. Would have been a good story, even though he would have faced an uphill battle in the next round, but he came close, just a couple stage points. That's, the difference really here at the end of the day.
2 points at any point. Maybe ends up needing to be 3. I don't know. Actually, I'm pretty sure Sieg would have had the tiebreaker because he did finish 5th at Dega. I don't think Brandon Jones had a top 5. So just 2 points, but gave it a try. I think most people thought his only chance of getting through was probably to win at Talladega. And he obviously didn't make it through, but came really, really close.
Yeah, especially with this race being a road course. If that was his first top 10 on a road course, it wouldn't shock me.
I don't think it is, but he doesn't have very many. The other couple other guys that we thought would fight for a spot that didn't make it through. Daniel Hemrick damaged lap 1, lap 2, super early in the race.
Just drove it into the wall.
Never really recovered. Ultimately finished 17th and wound up being eliminated by 11 points. And then Riley Herbst who was in, was out, was in, was out, has some late race contact with James Davison. Then the quarter panel comes loose. It gets actually like in behind the tire, it looked like, but it was running fine still. Then he's just wrong place, wrong time, gets behind, doesn't get too damaged in one of the accidents. And then ultimately, I think they maybe, I don't know if they pit at that point, but then does ultimately crash and finish 32nd, missing by 20 points. But I'm sure it's disappointing, but a very solid season for them.
Yeah, I think honestly that one might be a little bit more disappointing than Ryan Sieg, because like Ryan Sieg was there, and he gave it his all, and he probably left the track saying, there's not much more I could have done. I think at the end of the day, Riley Herbst looks back at this race, and everything went wrong there at the end for him, and that's just racing sometimes. But I think it's a lot more frustrating for him. Probably when you add on his future, we don't know what's going on with him. I think we both agree that he definitely deserves to be back in that car next year with the improvement he's shown, but that's far from a guarantee. And if he needed to make a deep playoff run to really get some more people on board, that's very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, it's certainly unknown here with Riley Herbst. Still young, still only 23, but I agree, as you mentioned, just a much better season. Wasn't really the cause of cautions like we had seen. He's currently tied for his career high in top 10s, which was his 1 year with JGR. Already has a career high for top 5s. Average finishes increased over that JGR year by almost 2.5 positions. And I think we would be in agreement that the Stewart Haas car he's driving not as good as the JGR cars that he was driving. So impressive that he's been able to outrun it. Was very solidly in the playoffs most of the year, never really in question. Unlike last year where it looked like, oh, maybe he's going to miss. And I think even the year before was pretty close. Just unfortunate timing. Bad luck for him at the end. Ultimately cost him a shot of moving on. Going back to Daniel Hemrick real quick, just guess a bit of a consolation prize. It was announced earlier today that he is going to be back with Colleague next year. So they did. It seemed like managed to secure some funding between middle of last week and now. I don't know how much could change that fast, but apparently enough.
I'm surprised both him and Landon are back in that car next year, but hey, good for them.
Like Landon, you can kind of get it. He's certainly not young, but doesn't have a lot of experience in top tier equipment and did solid this year. Hemrick, I mean, I don't know. Like I think we've seen what Hemrick is. Yet he still is managing to secure a sponsorship to continue riding. Last guy, Jeremy Clements, finished 14th, missed by 54 points. Pretty uneventful race for him. I mean, he kind of knew he'd have to win to get in, and it felt like that opportunity was at Talladega, not here. Mm-hmm. For the notables in the field, I already mentioned him earlier, but James Davison finished 4th with damage, effectively driving half a modified, it felt like. But solid day, finished 4th. I certainly think if he could get like a full road course schedule, at least he could battle for one of these wins somewhere. Alex Labay finished 6th, a very solid finish for him. Best finish since the Roval in 2020. And Alex Labay actually really good at the Roval, I found out. He has 5 career races here, of which he has top 15s in all of them, 3 top 10s, and his only series top 5 here. And his 3 best career finishes all have come at this track. Last guy,
impressive.
Yeah, I mean it's very solid. He's another guy that could contend with like a playoff spot, I think, if they had a better car. But it was very solid this year. Last guy I want to mention, Daniel Kvyat, finished 15th, just his 3rd stock car race at the time. Now has 4th after he ran the Cup race at the Roval as well. But Sam Hunt car is pretty solid, so I think pretty solid day for Kvyat.
I mean, I think I saw him late in the race as high as 12th. He might have been a little bit higher earlier in the day, but I thought it was solid equipment, and he put together a solid showing. And like you said, only his 3rd stock car start. I can't say that was a bad performance from him. He did what he needed to do. Take a look at some of the other guys here. I know one person I want to mention is just Anthony Alfredo. He did come home in 12th. But him and his teammate, Jeb Burton, not getting along in pit road, that might have been one of the more spicier things, I guess you could say, during the Xfinity race. Both drivers having a heated argument in the pits. didn't quite catch it on the track. It looks like one of them ran into the other one, and it kind of spilled over to after the race. So not good times at our motorsports. I mean, we already had Brett Moffitt lose his ride for sponsorship reasons, and now this. I'm willing to bet there's going to be some shakeups there in the off season.
I mean, that feels pretty certain. Jeb has been, I mean, pitiful, just to be honest. There's no really other way to put it. Whereas Anthony Alfredo has finished in the top 10 and I think has at least a top 5. Jeb is a big ol' 0 for 29 with an average finish of 21.7. Even in the last year in the Colic car, there's only 16 top 10s, which is definitely less than I feel like you want from your drivers that are in a top tier Xfinity car. I mean, I don't know if Hemrick or Castle are going to hit that mark this year either, but I also think the Colic car is definitely a step back this year compared to last year.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was
going to say, just looking at the top 10s, it looked like Landon has 11 this year and Hemrick has 10. But again, they're nowhere near as good as they were last season, I feel like.
Jeb feels like he's on his last leg. Maybe Jeb knows that he's on his last leg. I mean, not that it's a huge difference, but Anthony Alfredo is outrunning him in the average race by 2.7 positions, which I mean can be pretty significant. Jeb Burton's average finish behind both Alex Labay and Brandon Brown, and Brandon Brown has driven some shit boxes the last month or so. Also well behind what Moffitt's was before he stopped running for that team. Although Moffitt, I think, got a top 10 when he was last out with Bobby Daughter, so that pushed up a little bit, but still would have been well ahead of Jeb's. I mean, Jeb's just clearly the third driver on that team. There are plenty of young guys that I don't know how much funding they bring, but I think certainly run better than Jeb there. I think Jeb's time as a full-time racer, I think, is about up.
I would agree. I mean, he's had his chances in good equipment, and he hasn't performed, unfortunately. I know he did get a win last year driving for Colleague, but it was at Talladega in a rain-shortened race. So, he didn't have the best year last year when I feel like he needed to. And if he ran just a little bit better, if he had a top 10 or 2 top 10s like Alfredo and, had a higher average finishing position, didn't have to be amazing. He didn't have to make the playoffs or anything like that, but I think it's pretty clear he's been the worst guy there, and I'm probably expecting a lot different situation for Jeb Burton next year.
The next highest guy in points with 0 top 10s is Josh Williams, and I don't think, no offense to Josh Williams, he actually is, I feel like, decently solid for the chances he does get. You don't really want to be in the same category as Josh Williams in anything.
I would.
I mean, even Joe Graff Jr. has a top 10. Mason Massey has 2. Kyle Sieg has 1. Jeffrey Earnhardt has 2. So, just not a good season for him, and you got to feel like this is coming to the end. I think our motorsports would be very smart to trim down to 2 cars, especially if there's not 100% full funding for 3 full-time guys. And just focus on the 2 cars. I think we saw some different guys have gotten in the cars lately. You see a little bit of speed here and there. So, and they're just to me, I don't think Jeb brings enough money for it to be worth it. And there are too many really good young guys that don't have great shots yet.
Mm-hmm. And I think going into the year, we thought our motorsports was like a decent team, and I think going back down to 2 cars would definitely help them. It wouldn't shock me if you saw an uptick in performance next year if they did do that.
Yeah, I thought they could maybe contend for a spot. I mean, they were kind of close. They were the first team that didn't have any drivers in the playoffs. But I certainly think going down to 2 cars would help them better.
Speaking of someone who had speed, and I think this is a very good sign for this team, and that's Stephen Parsons for Tommy Joe's team, Alpha Prime. He was running in the top 5 at the end of that race before he got spun out.
Yeah, I mean, and also was it Sage that was in the O2?
Yeah, for an hour. Yeah, he was up there as well.
Up there as well. So 2 guys having two good runs. Derailed late, just kind of got, typical Roval crazy with people getting spun, but a lot of cars out there that I think could contend if they could ever land one driver in them.
Mm-hmm. And, I think the musical chairs at the Cup level might be ending. I think there's a lot still left to be seen in the Truck and Xfinity series. So it's definitely going to be interesting as we get into the off season and see what drivers end up where. I mean, we already know Chandler Smith's going to calling next year. So that's one seat already filled. Brandon Jones to the 9. That's another. I'm sure we're going to have information on Gibbs drivers soon for next year. And I think after that, you'll see those mid-tier teams start to fill in once we get the big announcements out of the way. But that really wraps it up for the Xfinity series. Again, pretty tame race until maybe right at the end. Next round, obviously, for them, they're going the next 3 weeks, just like the Cup series. So going to be very interesting to see what happens there. I think it's all up in the air, except possibly Noah Gragson finding a way to lose Homestead. I think that might be the only thing that could very well be a lock with how he's just had bad luck in that race over the last couple of years. But moving over to the Cup Series, as I'm sure you guys picked up on the intro there, again, call me shocked, Christopher Bell, out of nowhere on a track where Toyota has shown, or a type of track Toyota has shown no speed all year, a road course. Got a little crazy there at the end. A late yellow for a sign on the track that may or may not have been there a while. That's up for debate. I know some drivers said it was.
I saw one driver say it was. I feel like if that was the case, we would have seen more drivers say it was.
I mean, it could be a situation where, when they're waiting on rain or something like that, and somebody needs rain yellow or they don't, and it happens either before or after they need it. Regardless, that did set up a very crazy finish. Christopher Bell coming in to take tires.
Even before that, too. Like, this race itself was not great.
No, it was pretty...
But the playoff picture in it was pretty interesting throughout.
That would be fair.
As we've seen with this car, certainly wasn't... it's not easy to pass. When there aren't a big wide track that you can go to, which is why cars have been so good at the 1.5 miles that have multiple lanes of racing in Texas, and not as good at some of the short tracks, the road courses. But I mean, Christopher Bell pulls off the upset, but it's how we got there when the people that got eliminated. I mean, it was pretty, like I said, pretty tame race. Joey won the first stage, another playoff point for
every
him.
lap, I think.
But every lap in the first stage. And we saw, 10 guys there are 10 guys staying out for stage points, take the top 10 spot, something like that. They all cycle back, and really none of them move forward.
Yeah, it was bad.
They just kind of all stick there. I don't know if any of them got back to the top 15 even before the end of stage 2. Now, they all finished in the top, 8 or so because everyone in front of them pit. I know, like Denny, for example, said that they lost so much track position that they knew they weren't going to get stage points anyway. So they actually went ahead and pit at the end of stage 2. Ross did a similar thing at the end of stage 1, and used that to his advantage to actually win stage 2. Some point in stage 3, Suarez's power steering goes away, and he is just fighting for his life. He is 2.5 plus off the pace. From what he was running even later in the race once they got it a little bit fixed. And it looks like Suarez is out. Then Chastain hits the wall again. Already had to come for the back. Hits the wall. Now he's in a precarious spot. And remind me when it happened, because I don't remember if it was before any of the cautions or after. But then Kyle Larson hits the wall.
That was before. That was after Ross, and we didn't get.
It was after Ross.
It was after Ross. We didn't get a clip of it until after the race, but he hit the same wall that Chase Elliott got turned into there last year, and it broke the toe link on the 5 car.
Same thing. Ross was the one. Ross also broke a toe link. Ross went to the garage and fixed it since it wasn't a caution. There's no DVP. But Larson breaks the toe link. They just try to fix it on pit road. Loses 5 laps, and he's in for the record. He is in. It's close, but he's in. Chase cruising to a victory, and then we get the caution.
And, like we were saying, Christopher Bell on that, he comes in and gets 4 tires. A lot of other drivers pit as well.
There was, Bell's pretty high for the guy that pits. He's 7th, but he has to win.
He doesn't have a choice.
He has to win. And I think if you're going for the best finishing position there, you probably do stay out, but Bell has to win. He's going to have a really hard time winning from 7th. He brings it in the pit. Briscoe and Cindric both stay out. The two guys that are, one of them, I think at this point, it's Cindric that's right on the inside. Briscoe's right on the outside, but they know they need points. They know they need points. They stay out. I thought Cindric should have pit. It's really easy for me to make that call, but I thought Cindric should have pit. Briscoe was far up enough that I knew he'd have some cars behind him. Cindric, I was concerned, would not have that many cars between him and the lapped cars. Not the lapped cars, the cars that just pit. But then they get the restart. Chase and AJ both get a pretty good restart, but then they just lean on each other hard. Ends up, Chase loses all his momentum. Then later, AJ ends up in the grass. Some out of nowhere, in typical Harvick fashion, Kevin Harvick is suddenly the leader. Chase winds up getting spun by Reddick. Whether he spun himself doesn't really matter. Through the grass. But here comes Christopher Bell through all this. tearing his way up there. I think before the end of I don't remember where he restarted. It was outside the top 10.
12th. Started 12th on
12th,
the
okay.
restart.
I'm pretty sure before they got back to the line there, he was third. Maybe fourth.
That sounds right. It did help that there were a couple incidents there, but he was able to get through them very fast too, and now he has a chance. And like he said, he wished that race was going to go green the rest of the way because he didn't want to deal with another restart. With all this going on, I believe yellow came out for, I know Ty Dillon got spun around. I know Chase Briscoe was in an incident there, and it looked like it was all over for Chase Briscoe until that next yellow came out that allowed the 14 car to come in and take tires.
It was the turtle broke.
That's what yes. Yeah.
I know. Broke.
It was hard to tell at first because they kept going back and forth. They showed the hairpin. They didn't zoom in the turtle. They had a camera on Ty Dillon who was stuck in the grass. But yes, no, they ended up having a red flag because the turtle snapped in half.
So it snapped off the concrete track or the asphalt, whatever it is. And they fixed it. They're under red flag, which I'm sure is a great time for all these drivers here. Some of them that just lost a bunch of spots, like Briscoe, I'm sure are fuming. Bell's probably as anxious as he possibly could be. But they get going.
I don't think he was that anxious. He had enough time to give an interview during it. So
I mean, at that point, what else are you gonna do? Like, you just
kind of gets your mind off things.
the waiting. Like, I'm sure Bell feels pretty confident at that point, but with the chaos of the roll, like, I'm sure he thinks if he doesn't get wrecked, he's gonna win the race. As long as he doesn't get wrecked, but it's the Roval, and he's gonna be on the outside and. I don't actually know which way the leader takes normally, but he's on the front row. But we've seen that front row plenty of times. Oh, yeah. Drivers either on their own accord or other people's accord just completely miss the turn.
And
but then Briscoe pits. Cindric still stays out. He is in now, but I think he can not. Maybe he can lose one spot with where whoever is that first guy out is.
I think it was a couple because at that point Briscoe was at the back because he had to pit. So I think he had like maybe 3 or 4 points, but the fact he was on old tires.
And he may have realistically needed to get a point. He did because he was behind Larson still. And at that point, you have to work under the assumption that Bell's going to get the lead.
So yeah, I think when they restarted, he was a couple points up, but you're right. You got to work that. Right.
But he was out because he was behind Larson. So if Bell got the lead,
it was over.
And all Larson can, like, at this point, Suarez knows his chances are basically done. Chastain knows he's probably pretty safe just because of the gap he has, and it's hard he can't really lose that. He can't lose any more points, really. None of them can lose more points except for the fact that the drivers can get a couple. Chastain was ahead of Larson, so he probably feels pretty safe, but Larson only a point or two up on Cindric. Restart happens. Cindric, I don't remember if he ever gets spun around or anything.
Did in the chicane, the backstretch chicane on that restart. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Gets spun around, and now Larson looking like it might be good, but Bell easily takes the lead, by the way. Like, it's not even, it was so much of it felt like a foregone conclusion. He takes the lead, and he's gone. Here comes Briscoe, though, on those new tires. Trying to do everything he can to run down every position he can. He gets several. And what was it, Brandon? 2 points?
He made it in by 2 points. Those last 2 points he got in that backstretch chicane when he got around Austin Dillon and Cole Custer.
What's funny is didn't need him. He had the tiebreaker,
Yeah.
didn't need him. Certainly an aggressive move there that could have ended up costing him.
I mean, we've seen
Jimmy
people throw away points. Yep, we've seen people in those. Obviously, that was the front stretch chicane, but we've seen people make those moves.
Going for a win, so
yeah.
But at the end of the day, against all odds, literally, I don't know if you told me that out of all the brackets that were ever made in this, it's not like NCAA, so it's not like there's a super easy way to track it. Though NASCAR should have one on their website that would actually probably be a pretty good interactive thing. But I don't think anyone really had Briscoe getting out of the round of 16. And I think even fewer people had him getting out of the round of 12. Yet here he is, Chase Briscoe, into the round of 8, where if he can get through, did win Phoenix in the spring.
Yeah, I know. I'm shocked by that.
I will give him all the credit in the world for having, first round not great, but solid enough. 27th at Darlington, that's not great, but 13th at Kansas, 14th at Bristol, solid enough to escape through. But here he goes into this round with 4 top 10s on the whole season, none since Charlotte. 3 straight top 10s in this round. 5th at Texas, 10th at Dega, and 9th here at the Roval.
Very good round.
Can't really, it's easy to be like, well, he doesn't deserve it because he would have been like 16, 17 at the points, yada, yada. But in this, everyone plays under the same rules. They got there this round, and they did what they had to do. Barely, but they did what they had to do, move on to the next round, where I'm sure everyone will again not pick Chase Briscoe to advance to the Final Four. I certainly won't. But I mean, they seem to just be doing everything they can to get through. But quite honestly, probably the bigger news, Kyle Larson, defending champion, out before the round of 8.
Yeah, that's the one that's probably even more shocking than Briscoe making it, because Talladega's in there. You expect things to happen, and maybe you could spin it. Oh, Briscoe got enough points through there to make it in the round. Things happen. I don't think anybody expected Kyle Larson to miss, and especially the way they missed. It looked like he was, perfectly safe, even after the toe link issue. But the late race restarts, they did him in.
Yeah, it literally was. I thought this at the time. Once he got in, he'll be safe unless someone outside wins. If someone outside wins, and then Cindric or Briscoe, because it could have been one of them, and then just the other one gets points. But someone else, Cindric Briscoe on back, needs to win, and then one of Cindric or Briscoe needs to get the points to pass Larson, and that was the only way he was going to miss, and that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. A bit of a silver lining for the 5 team, though. They are still in the owner points championship, so I'm sure Kyle Larson feels great about that after everything that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it is true, at least, that in the Cup Series, that is what determines the money they get.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the lower series where it's a split between driver and owner points. So it's, from a pocketbook, a decent consolation, though I'm pretty sure he would have preferred just to still be alive to begin with.
I think he would have, too. I think he'd much rather be racing for the driver championship than the owner championship.
Yeah, 45 obviously also eliminated. Was pretty close. Would you say 5 points?
Yeah, five points back. That's all Bubba missed it by.
So it was pretty close. Bubba, solid day today, finished 7th, 9th, one of those two. So definitely solid day for the Roval, for a road course for sure for him. A great year, I think, for Bubba. We'll talk about all of them once the season's over, but a lot of guys have had great years this year. But some guys that are out, like Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, certainly can't say that. Although I will say for Kyle Busch, finished 3rd today, his first top 5 since Gateway.
I didn't realize he even got up to 3rd, going to be honest. I didn't see him until probably that next to last
asked me if he was even in that race at some point during it.
I did ask because he was invisible today.
Gets up to 3rd, first top 5 since Gateway, just his 3rd top 10 in that time span as well.
Yeah, it's been a rough last couple months for him.
But obviously, in addition to already mentioned Chase, who won a race, Christopher Bell, who won this race, and Briscoe, who got in by the skin of his teeth. Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, William Byron all move on. And it was never that close, although Byron does not get in if they don't get this penalty overturned.
That's 100% true. So I know they're very happy about that, and they're never going to be able to pull that one again just because of the rule change NASCAR had to make after the fact. But it worked, whether you agree you should have or shouldn't have gotten penalized, or if the appeal was the correct decision. William Byron's moving on. It's unfortunate for Kyle Larson because he'd be the guy safe if his teammate didn't catch that break. But I like Byron's chances.
What if Hendrick cost Byron or cost Larson the championship?
That'd be something. That'd be pretty crazy. Like if Kyle Larson just maybe not even goes on a tear, but does what he needs to do to end up winning, the Owners' Championship. I'm sure you could do the math there and figure it out. But yeah, that'd be something else. Especially if it is not a Hendrick driver that ultimately wins the championship. They got 2 guys left, but we'll see.
So I will say this because I mentioned very specifically that I did not want to bring this up unless something came out of it because it's kind of a nothing burger to me. But NASCAR is reviewing data, video, and radio transmissions from the 41 car following its incident on the backstretch during the final lap.
Listen, I saw Parker Kligerman pull up Chase Briscoe's data saying, he broke later into that last turn, which is 100% true. Briscoe did overdrive the turn. But I was watching that live, and Austin Dillon drastically closes up on Cole Custer there going into that backstretch chicane to the point where Austin couldn't pull out and try to pass Briscoe. I mean, not Briscoe, Custer, and that's how Briscoe was able to get by both of them. That'd be pretty funny if something does happen, because in the grand scheme of things, it didn't affect anything. Briscoe had the tiebreaker, and he would have made it.
And it doesn't affect anything because NASCAR already said that any potential penalties would not affect the round of 8 field. So it sounds like the 41 would get a penalty, but they're not going to do anything to the playoff field, which at this point seems like a nothing again.
I don't even think you could really penalize Custer. I get, you want to take a look at it because of what happened in 2013 with Spingate. This is not the same situation. I think we would all agree there's probably a line there. Helping your teammate get a spot, just a position or two, is a lot different than parking your car in pit road.
Matt Weaver actually went and talked to Cole Custer about this, to which Cole Custer said, tried to pass the 8. He drove me down on the apron on oval 1. I came back on track with vibration. Team yelled at me that I had a flat, so I eased it into the corner to see what I had. I got run over by the 3 twice. Thought I had a flat, had a vibration, got run over. Which, I mean, if that's true, pretty easy to...
It would end up finishing 24th. So I'd say that's believable.
I mean, at the end of the day, all of that is pretty verifiable in terms of communications and him getting run down. So
you had a tire going down. That's something you'd very easily be able to see when he brought it back into the pits. But even if Custer was trying to help Briscoe out, again, I don't think that's anything crazy enough to warrant a penalty.
I just think that as long as, first of all, I'm sorry, we did not penalize Denny Hamlin after Gateway for messing with Ross Chastain. I think there's very little that we could penalize people for. That's based on that precedent. But at the end of the day, none of us want an F1 situation where William Byron is literally pulling over to let Chase Elliott win a race. Nobody wants that. I have nothing against your running there. He probably gave up a few too many spots, but if you're giving up one spot, even if it's in the top 10, if it's not first or maybe even second or third, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's a team sport, whether we like it or not. And as long as they're not literally doing everything they can to win, that's to me the distinction. You're not giving up a win. You're not giving up maybe even the top 2 or 3. Probably not even the top 5, but then I think it depends on the situation here. I have no problem with it. And then at plate tracks, I mean, you could just push someone to win. That's just kind of accepted. But even if Custer literally just pulled over and gave Briscoe the spot, well, that's the power of having teammates. It's not something we're going to see every week. If we start seeing it to where they're that was part of the thing that was so annoying with F1 is they do it from the beginning of the season. Right. Here, it's usually only in situations that matter. like when you literally need that point to move on. And if that's what happens, that's what happens. We've had the same kind of general discussions at Bristol. And to me, I just don't care. As long as you're not taking a race-winning car and putting it in the garage. Like in Spingate, quite frankly, I have nothing wrong with what Brian Vickers did. Even though that's mostly what they got penalized for. It's when you are bringing out a caution on purpose that affects the entire outcome of a race that I think the line is crossed.
Right. No, I would agree with that. But I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen with the Cole Custer thing, because I just don't know. Especially if he ended up having a flat tire, I think that pretty much just ends it right there. Like, what? Can't penalize him. Can't penalize him in that situation if that's what happened.
Agreed. Race is official. Cindric and Gregson in the 48, who had a pretty solid run today, was going to maybe get a top 10 before getting, I don't know exactly what happened. He was involved in one of the late cautions. But very solid day today. Didn't get the finish though, but Gregson and Cindric to the R&D center.
Yeah, I can't rule anything not coming out from that. We didn't expect anything with Harvick, so
I mean, at this point, it's always possible.
yeah.
I don't expect anything to come out from it, but it's always possible.
But man, just an interesting finish. And I know there were a lot of other things that come out of the race. I know Chase Elliott not happy with the finish. Ryan Blaney not happy with the finish. I know Blaney was talking about just non-playoff guys driving like idiots, causing wrecks at the end of the race. So definitely not thrilled. And I think Chase kind of agrees the same thing there. And I know he had some comments about the car. It's not good.
Too often we saw guys just not able to pass, and it's one thing if you can't pass just because like you're being blocked, but like they can't even get to the guys is the thing, right? They're stock cars. I honestly prefer if they have to almost push someone out of the way to pass sometimes. Give them a good old bump, but they can't even get to them to give them the bump is the problem.
Right.
So it's certainly work to be done still. Maybe we should just go back to the overall number, or the like not the format itself, but the schedule in terms of the number of the kinds of races in the chase from like 07.
Listen, I mean, it might be a better product. I know I saw people on Twitter after the race saying this, where it's like we were having the best year ever, and in a matter of a week, it's gone.
If we go to 07, obviously we go to Texas, so that sucks. Probably have to figure out something different with Atlanta, since maybe we'll just, I don't know what we throw in there, because Atlanta's different now. It's not even the same Atlanta. It's an entirely different track. But all those other races had a good race at Loudon, good race at Dover, obviously good race at regular Charlotte, decent race at Phoenix. Homestead's to be determined. Texas is terrible. I'm sure I'm missing somewhere in there. Martinsville's still there, but Martinsville's yeah.
Listen, next year is going to be really, really big with this car, and never mind the safety things they have to change, but just the car itself. Things that I've heard coming out of test sessions, it's not necessarily great news. So
I think it'll be better. I think the safety will be better for sure. Not to where we want it to be, not to where the drivers want it to be necessarily. But I think better. I think there are some changes they can make to make the cars race better in some situations. It's not going to be perfect though. It's absolutely not.
No, it's a work in progress.
To be fair, perfect might be unobtainable, and I'm okay with that. But the reality is, you can't make the short tracks worse, and I think that should be something that it feels fixable.
I think the short tracks do, and I'd assume if you could. Well, I don't know if the road courses are fixable, but that also has to do with stages. That's a completely different problem. Because I think even if you fix the cars, you're still going to run into the problems that stage racing.
Because you always have issues. Because there's the one thing I don't think they can fix on this car without completely changing the car. With that point, what's the point? Is the tire. Tire is almost certainly too wide, and I don't think you can change that without changing the whole car. And that is definitely, if a change that's going to happen, 24 would be the absolute earliest.
Mhm. So
Because if that was going to happen this year, Goodyear would already have to know and be working on it. So it's just some things NASCAR's fault, some things not NASCAR fault, but it's not been a good few weeks. Some things, maybe their fault, but not, related to the car specifically.
I think it's been going downhill since Darlington, and that got covered up by a good win with Eric Jones. And those issues at Darlington, not necessarily because of the car; those would be other issues with the officiating. I think he caught a break at Kansas. They didn't seem to have any issues there, but Bristol was an absolute disaster. Texas was an absolute disaster. I thought Talladega was okay, but I know a lot of people weren't pleased with the racing.
I thought the racing was good. It'd be nice if they could form a third line there. My only issue with Talladega was the end of the truck race. No matter which way you slice it, I think they made the right call with the. I don't know. I'm not gonna say they made the right call with the caution, but it would have felt bad if the caution comes out or the caution doesn't come out. DiBenedetto doesn't win and Ben Rhodes doesn't get penalized. That would have felt bad.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. And that today I think he had issues with the car and the finish. While entertaining, I think it probably left a bad taste in a lot of the fans and clearly a lot of the drivers' mouths. So
at the end of the day, I think almost, and especially with these cars, any track we go to that has a cutoff like this, we're gonna see a bunch of crap happen at Bristol.
You mean Martinsville?
Bristol, sorry, Martinsville.
I mean, if they can get to somebody, to hit them.
If there is a caution in the last 75 laps, like every time, they're because they know if you're gonna pass somebody, you got to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a good chance that the race is not good, but a shit show.
Mm-hmm. If they're just gonna send it in there and hope something works, that's a recipe for that to happen. So, definitely very possible. But we got our 8 guys. They'll be fighting for those 4 spots, and I think we're gonna see regular races these first 2. At Las Vegas and Homestead coming up, but. You're right. Martinsville being hard to pass. If you get in that situation late in this race, they're definitely going to send it in there, and there's probably going to be a lot of hurt feelings if that were to happen. So, a couple weeks, we'll find that out. Any final thoughts on the race?
It was Roval. If we went back, it's crazy, but if we went back to Charlotte Oval, I wouldn't be opposed. Maybe go back to Charlotte Oval, turn Texas into a road course. Who cares?
Yeah. I think that could be a solution, unless you're willing to get rid of a date from Atlanta. I'd be okay with that.
People could argue about all they want. Incredibly impressed by the playoff run so far Chase Briscoe has managed to put together. All he did is survive, but that's something that so far 8 other drivers have not been able to do.
Definitely fair. I don't know if I'm impressed by it, but I'm not going to take that away from him. He's done what he's had to do, and that's why he's still racing for a championship. How about the picks? How about the fantasy? I know it wasn't that good.
Well, so truck or cup, nope, Xfinity race. You picked AJ to win. We both effectively did. I couldn't. I picked Austin Hill, who was running solid before his power steering broke. For value picks, I went with James Davison, who did get a solid 4th. You went with Daniel Kvyat, who did finish 15th. For our head-to-heads here, I had Barry over Hemrick, which that one hit. You had Davison over Brandon Jones. Pretty close. Jones did finish 7th, I think. I'm pretty sure Davison finished 4th. But, it was close, but both of those did hit. For the Cup race, you had William Byron, I had Chase Elliott. I was looking good. I just don't... I know I'll have to hear it again, but I'm over the NASCAR's rigged for Chase Elliott because it was a sign. They could have just as easily not thrown a caution for it if they really wanted to.
Out of the groove, but they opted for entertainment.
And I don't think it was a wrong call necessarily. I didn't care either way. It's very annoying hearing the NASCAR rigged for Chase when there are also plenty of examples where things that have not been cautions all the time or they conveniently have waited other points are suddenly cautions. So For our betting race picks, I went with Chris Buescher, who finished. I have it here. Give me a second. Top 10, 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I heard McDowell's name at some point. I know he was running
He got
okay.
caught in one of those wrecks on the restart.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Ended up 27th.
So for Group A, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, AJ Allmendinger. I picked Chase Elliott. You picked AJ Allmendinger, and AJ Allmendinger did win Group A. For Group B, and also with AJ Allmendinger, this won't get mentioned to anyone else here because he doesn't come up at any point. But Justin Haley also had a fifth. AJ Allmendinger finished fourth. First time 2 top 5s for Kaulig in a race. Not that shocking since it's the first year they're running full time and then first year they're running 2 cars, but still, solid day for them. Solid day. For Group B, William Byron, Daniel Suarez, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cedric. Byron did take this one. Didn't finish well. Finished like 12th or 14th, but Suarez had his issue. Cedric spun late, and I think Blaney spun late too. Lord, may they never swap paint schemes again.
Oh, man.
Group C, Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe. Well, neither of us picked Christopher Bell, and Bell won the race. Which, not necessarily good for any picks today. Definitely good for your championship picks, though.
That is true. That is very true. Very good there. I probably should have put a little bit more money on him.
I mentioned it. If you thought he could get it done, he was like 6,000 or something like that.
Yeah, I did not think he was going to get that today.
And Group D, Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., and Kyle Busch. We both picked Buescher, who had a solid day, but Kyle Busch brought it home third to win Group D.
Mm-hmm.
My parting thought here is similar to stuff like Couch Racer said, and I think the general feel like at this point, I just want the season to be over. I don't think I've ever felt this way about NASCAR. Well, that's probably not true. Some of those late 2000s when Jimmy was certainly going to win and everyone else was out. Those, I'm sure I just felt like wanted those to be over. But, several guys I'm rooting for still have a clear shot at the championship, and it just has come off the rails so quickly that can't help but just sit here and be like, well, maybe next year we'll get the full package.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. It's been a rough, month and a half. I don't think we really started having these problems. Maybe you could go back to Daytona, the race before the playoffs started, given the rain situation that happened there, though. Out of everything that's happened over the last month and a half or so, I really feel like that's the least that NASCAR could have done to change. That was kind of just a very unfortunate situation, and it's just got the snowball rolling to where we are now, and I think there's a lot of people that are pissed off, and there's probably a lot of people like, yourself, like you were saying, that just want it to be over. I'm not at that point. I think we're going to have at least 2 weeks here coming up of really good racing. I'm very hopeful we'll see something good out of Las Vegas and Homestead. But Martinsville, I think you already said it. That could be a chaotic race at the end, depending on what happens, and it also could be very boring at the same time until the chaos happens if there's a late yellow. And Phoenix was okay earlier in the year, but
it was Phoenix.
It wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything special. So you got 4 races left. They're going to be interesting, to say the least. And I can't wait till next week to get the ball rolling here in the round of 8. And maybe we'll figure out one of the drivers, at least, who will be going on to the Final 4 at Phoenix and racing for the championship. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Bernie Breakdown. Be sure to come back and listen to us when we preview the race at Las Vegas here in a couple of days. Until next time, thanks for listening. Brandon Monroe here. Thanks for listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Remember to keep listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember to follow us at Bernie Breakdown on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all of our other social media platforms.